The women had their own asylum. That eventually led to an asylum of the Unteachable Idiots, which eventually led to the Bethel Colony. And that was unique in that there was a proper diet. Positive habits were trying to be incorporated with the patients, and it was a therapeutic environment. So they really were trying to make strides to improve these people's lives while they're staying at the asylum. This eventually led to the Letchworth Village, and this one was showcased. It was very popular. It was very well renowned because it had a cottage system separating each type of patient by gender or degree of their disability. So that was unlike anything that I'd ever seen before. So incorporating the Bethel Colony's treatments of proper diets and habiting and this cottage system that separates them appropriately, you eventually saw the progression of the asylums. And this is obviously very cool to look at, just see how far it's come, not only in the name right, because some of these names are extremely offensive. Asylum for Idiots, the Unteachable Idiots, it progressed obviously to mental institutions that we have today, which is kind of interesting to see, and just the lack of care of being having any sort of sensitivity toward these people, as well as just the general way that we've changed to treat these patients. So it was nice and welcoming to see that. As we continue on, we eventually got to the world of eugenics and Galton, which is a very extremely different case. So eugenics is essentially trying to rid of any genetic imperfections, similar to how Hitler would eradicate anybody that was different from what he thought was ideal: blue eyes, blonde hair. Eugenics is kind of similar. It's just trying to get rid of all those imperfections, so you could get rid of essentially the mentally challenged and the disabled by getting rid of them having any sort of ability to reproduce, putting them away, just all around bad treatment. There's castration, spraying of the insane so they don't produce anything, and people were on board with it. It was kind of weird. France, USA, and Great Britain, and all to some extent, kind of were buying into eugenics, and it wasn't until Hitler and the insanity that he produced on the world did eugenics really start to go away and its popularity eventually decreased. So that was kind of cool. I mean, obviously, I've heard of Hitler, and I've heard of his ideal world, which was obviously crazy, but I never really would have thought that it was starting to get approved, even here in the States. Things like competitions for babies. You go to food or farmers markets, and they have the fattest pig, and you get an award. Well, there's like the perfect baby award given out during olden times, and you would get a cash prize or a slap on the back and job well done with a good kid. But it's just kind of crazy that was going on. So then we keep going along and throughout the tour, and we eventually get to the pop culture area and the sporting area, which is the most relevant, I feel, to us nowadays, because pop culture truly what helped the world become more accepting of people with disabilities and cognitive issues. One part being movies such as Rain Man were huge successes. People loved not only the movie but the actors that portrayed somebody disabled, and you would see that more and more people win Oscars for portraying mentally retarded people or disabled people, just because it's so moving to watch that character, and I think that kind of shifted focus for the general population to more of a sensitive stance versus a evil stance or a condemning stance as we'd see in the earlier years. Heroes such as Jim Albert for the New York Yankees pitched a no-hitter with one hand, literally. So that was pretty cool, and obviously that one's pretty close to my heart because I'm a huge Yankee fan, and I think that's pretty cool. Other ones that I had marked down were William Ellsworth Hoy, another baseball disability story. He was actually deaf, and he couldn't hear, and I had actually known about this story ahead of time through the Baseball Hall of Fame, but he was deaf, and he couldn't you couldn't hear a lot of things. So that's what helped develop hand signals in baseball, because they wanted to communicate with this deaf player. And now hand signals obviously are a huge part of the baseball game. And another story which I didn't know was that people were obviously happy for this player. He did very well, and the home fans would do kind of like a this motion whenever he did something good. So he more or less started the wave, which is pretty cool. I don't know, just thought it was kind of interesting. And then we obviously saw these Barbie dolls, like a wheelchair Becky, which is just, you see more and more accepting stances of the disability community. And as I alluded to before, pop culture really just shifted gears entirely. Everyone's negative stance of disability and cognitive issues, and I think for the better, obviously. And now, obviously, there's more accepting. There's the Paralympics, Special Olympics for all kinds of people with challenges, and I think it's actually kind of beautiful to see that in terms of our human population, that we've come to a point where now, instead of condemning people and bringing them down, we've actually started being more accepting of people. And I think that reflects kind of with the civil rights movement with women and African Americans, that now we've gotten to the point where we can be accepting of all types of people, even with mental challenges, physical challenges. And I think that's actually a quite beautiful thing if you think about it. And then finally, throughout our trip, we ended on the prosthetic portion, which was it was very interesting. It's especially important to see that as a PT, that we saw how crutches were developed by King Felipe, and how they were perfected by John Joseph Merlin, and eventually Teddy Roosevelt with his wheelchair brought about huge changes and reforms to be more accommodating for the wheelchairs and all those with disability features. And then we saw the car. I think because they got the car, it's like, hey, we should start a museum, which is kind of cool, because those cars are really rare, and the fact that they got one's kind of cool. These cars were obviously in London, and they were meant for disability people, people with a disability, people first. And I think specifically wheelchair patients, because they could roll up to the car and easily get in, and there was a stick that they could just push and pull and drive in that sense, and that was kind of cool. So we saw that, and we ended on that, and that concluded our tour of the whole place. And it's a really small museum, but just for that brief hour there, I was pretty impressed. The guy was pretty nice. He was very knowledgeable of everything, but I guess if I would go again, I would like to do it on my own with the audio thing, and just so I can really take my time, read everything. But overall, I think it was a great experience, and it kind of reinforced things I knew, and also introduced me to a lot of things that I did not know, specifically the history and how far we've come. And it makes you really really appreciate what we do for these people, as well as appreciate what they do every day to live with their disabilities, whether cognitive or physical. So overall, it was a good time. Hopefully this video was entertaining. Hopefully I did not do too many and I'll see you in class. Okay, take care.